Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I've got half of this thing is Bitcoin news, and then half is sort of macro context, what we have seen this week and what we can expect going forward. Cycle low date, or the timing band, is officially here, so let's do this. Just before we do this, actually, PayPal has quietly added back its $2,500 penalty again, using different language. I covered this before on the day that it came out and a couple of days after that. And if you've missed this somehow, then essentially what happened was PayPal modified its terms of use, its terms of service, to say that if you said something and they deemed it unacceptable, they could just debit your account 2.5K. So that's terrible. That led to frantic amounts of PayPal closures. They came out and said that this was not supposed to be in there. This had been put in there by mistake. But since then, they've added it back in, just using different wording. Moving on. I've got a little clip here of Bitcoin. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's 3 minutes, but sustainable food powered by the warmth of Bitcoin mining. So I'll show you this. They've got, as you can see, it's a very cold place. They set up a bunch of these ASICs to mine Bitcoin. These produce a lot of heat. Once these are producing heat, they redirect this heat to warm the inside of this plant, in which they grow things like lettuces and other vegetables. As you can see here. Where do they get the water from, she later asks, and downstairs they've got a Arctic char farm where they farm these fish. The fish produce waste, and then the waste is used as fertilizer, so the whole thing is sort of like a closed ecosystem, and all of it is made possible by what would otherwise be wasted heat from the Bitcoin miners. So this is a really nice example of how you can mine Bitcoin, help with the decentralization of the network, profit from the Bitcoin mined, and contribute to sustainable farming of fish and plants. It's not all good news in the Bitcoin mining world though, because the world's largest Bitcoin miner, Core Scientific, has dived 70%. Their stock price has dived down 70%, and it looks like they could well be going bankrupt. A bit of bullish news though, $1.1 billion in Bitcoin was withdrawn from Binance yesterday, according to CryptoQuant. So if you've been selling, if you've been taking positions not being aware of the cycle count, then you've likely been getting chopped up, and those stops have been going to a whale that has decided to pull the Bitcoin off of the exchange and pocket it ready for this bull market. This is the advantage of using the cycle lows. It will save you from getting chopped up in a sideways market. We'll get to the charts shortly. In the meantime, the UK Committee of Lawmakers has approved stablecoin regulation bill. Whilst this may well be interpreted by many as bullish for crypto, you can see here that really this is just about the discussion of the digital pound, or the UK's CBDC. Of course, Sunak has ties to the WEF and the digital ID system that his father-in-law created. So not bullish in my opinion. However, I do expect people to want to exit this system, and that money should of course be directed to Bitcoin to do so. Really bullish news out of Hong Kong, because Hong Kong are planning to legalize retail Bitcoin crypto trading again. So this is really significant, because huge amounts of money will flow through Hong Kong, not just from the people of Hong Kong, but also from China. The Chinese can use this as a proxy to legally get hold of Bitcoin and crypto. So this opens up the way for massive inflows out of Asia. We're also seeing that 74% of institutions plan to buy Bitcoin or crypto, according to Fidelity. So again, massive money is coming. It's no coincidence that all of these stars are aligning right near the cycle low, right near the end of the bear market for Bitcoin. We even had Obama's deputy chief of staff telling us that he would bet his Porsche that Bitcoin will get back to $60,000 again. And of course, it will. It's only a matter of time. We've got more bottom signals, especially from Plan B here. The percent of Bitcoin in profit is now down in the bear market low zone, so we can expect to form a base and emerge from that base rather rapidly. I've shown this piece of news over and over again, but I'm going to continue to show it because this is really important. Bitcoin is hope, Bitcoin is freedom. Over in Nigeria, the central bank of Nigeria's digital currency, their own CBDC, has just simply been refused by the people. The people have opted out. They have chosen to exit the system, and they've chosen to use Bitcoin to do so. This really shows that you can use Bitcoin to exit the system, and you can use Bitcoin to separate state from money. And I think it's really important to spread this message, because if enough people decide that they're going to use Bitcoin instead of the CBDC, then the state will really not be able to achieve the totalitarian takeover that they desire. So from the crypto news to the macro and the backdrop and everything we've learned this week, I'm going to start by playing you this quick summary of everything that's going on at the moment.
Since the the financial crisis, the central banks working in conjunction with the governments have basically created a zombie economy globally. And those who got wealthy were those who were closest to the printing machine. C-suite executives, hedge fund managers, asset managers, real estate developers. But if you were in the real economy doing real things, you've been falling behind for the last 12 years. There's been a game afoot, and the game is coming to an end. And all you need to understand to see what's going on is the central bankers and politicians will use every excuse to blame what's going to come on that rather than themselves. And the blame lies at their feet, bottom.
So that's what they do. They create a problem and then they blame everyone else. They say inflation is Putin's fault, and they say they had to print money because of their pandemic. They will look for any excuse they can rather than hold their hands up and say, this is all our fault. We're doing this deliberately to make everyone poor and to force you to accept our central bank digital currencies and digital IDs. 28% of US Treasury debt is maturing within the next year, and 52% of this Treasury debt is maturing within 3 years. The new coupons on the rolled debt, this is the debt that will be rolled over, will be substantially higher than the 1.5% average because of where the yields are today. Houston, the USA debt spiral is accelerating. Bitcoin is the insurance on this fiat Ponzi scheme. At the same time, we're coming off the back this week of earnings season. We've concluded as of yesterday. As you can see, the earnings recession is a lie. It's actually the big companies that have done the worst, such as Meta, Amazon. You can see here, earning per share above, but revenue was down. Apple, different story. Apple has beaten expectations across the board. I think the timing of all of this is interesting, that we've finally got all of this out of the way right at the cycle low. So we'll get to the charts in just a minute. The ECB, the European Central Bank, has raised rates by 75 basis points. Now, they are bucking the trend because we've seen central bank after central bank start to hike by 50 basis points instead, underneath the expectation of 75 basis points. So does this mean that we're going to see 75 basis points by the Fed on the 2nd of November? Quite possibly, but I think it's already baked in. Meanwhile, BlackRock economists are telling financial advisors that the next Fed meeting will include pivot language. So we're likely going to see a 75 basis point hike, I think. But all it would take is a little bit of dovishness, a little bit of pivot language, a little bit of suggesting that we'll see 50 basis points or 25 thereafter. And I'm sure this market is going to upset everyone that is currently hedged or short equities. The S&P 500 smart money confidence has been on a steep rise. Something different is going on behind the scenes here. The S&P 500 puts remain off the charts. Again, this is something that is going to ultimately provide rocket fuel for a massive, massive, massive short covering rally. And while the market is focused on earnings, the bond market is making its move. Are you watching credit? Because you should be. Equities should run with the 10-year dropping like this, even with poor tech earnings and good GDP. This is what I've been saying. This is why I call this chart the chart of truth, the US government 10-year yield. This is the chart of truth because when this comes off, when this truly breaks down and confirms, you best believe equities are going to run higher, and so is crypto. Let's get into the charts. Got the dollar here. You can see I said it would be strange if we hot knifed straight through this red trend line. We do appear to be getting a reaction. I think we're going to come up and form a lower high, and then we're going to break down. That would make sense to me. The chart of truth, the 10-year yield, break down from this trend line. Looking for that retest, could maybe be stricter on this. Still tells the same story. Breakdown, retest. Is this about to go right at the time the equity cycle low is due? That remains to be seen. We also happen to be forming a swing high, ready to drop into this cycle low. We are on day 37 at the moment. So a few more days would give us a perfect day 40 cycle low. As expected, this would become a very, very, very high confidence buy, particularly if we can hold above this top downward sloping trend line. We'll get rid of this because this is just kind of messy. We don't need that. We also don't really need this, but I'll leave it here. It's all about this blue line here. If we can get a drop down into that cycle low and go and resume off of this trend line and form a swing low pattern, then this becomes an ultra high confidence buy. If I get stopped on my NASDAQ position, I wanted to have exposure here because, as you can see, we had consolidation under resistance, a breakout, a retest on this wick, then we cleared this high. That was inherently bullish. Now, I did say at the time, I wanted to have exposure in case we just going to negate this cycle low, end up having to call this an early cycle low, and we were just going to rip higher. I did want to have some exposure. I said there's nothing wrong with taking a stop, because if we do, we'll just get back in as we form the cycle low for the S&P 500. So whether this low holds, whether I end up taking a stop on this, that remains to be seen. If I have to take a 1% stop, well, like I said, that is what it is. I wanted to have exposure so that I was covered in both directions. Looks like we're definitely going to get this cycle low form now. So wherever this forms, that will be a long from me. And if this gets stopped on the NASDAQ, I will re-enter there. No worries. The VIX is telling us we've called right off. You can see that here. The VIX is telling us that big upside rally is coming. I'm even going to set a trend line here because I really like to long a VIX from these low levels. Did really good job of longing this back here on the breakout. So we'll be looking to repeat that again. But in the meantime, I expect equities to find their cycle low and then for the VIX to cool off or the equities melt upwards. Are we finally going to get this last dip down from the UKX? I would love to see that. If we can get a dip down and break this trend line, then I would be delighted to long this on a breakout. That remains to be seen for now. I am currently still long Tesla in a longer term account, and I will continue to push this trade. I had Amazon here just because I wanted to see the earnings. You can see here that better on earnings, but below expectations slightly on revenue. I'm not interested in trading Amazon, so I'll get rid of that. Apple as well, I expect this is going to do well over the coming weeks since we have beaten expectations. So happy days there. It's almost time to long these Bitcoin related equities such as Coinbase, MicroStrategy, Riot, Marathon. They're all kind of telling me the same thing. They're all kind of telling me that maybe this is a trap. We're going to drop into this cycle low. You can see here, drop into that cycle low, drop into that cycle low, and drop into that cycle low, which will also coincide with a retest for some of these of the trend line, as you can see. And then I think we can go long and strong in longer term accounts. So as I've been saying for a few days, I took the profit on this first trade and I said I would re-enter short if we broke down from the yellow trend line and long if we got above the blue trend line. So that's that. I expect the dollar to bounce, as I said earlier. So if the dollar is going to have its reactionary bounce up here, you'd expect that to put pressure on gold and for gold to dive lower. That seems to be what's in play at the moment. So currently short. It is a Friday, not the sort of thing I like to do. But then again, I did say that this was the plan from all the way back here. So you have to stick with the plan. Here's Bitcoin. You can see Bitcoin, look, this is going to probably be a trap. We're going to drop down into this cycle low. How low down? Nobody knows. That's anybody's guess, but we do know it's going to drop down into this and form a swing. And I think whenever we form this swing, it's time to go. Same is true of Ethereum, probably rejected here. Find a cycle low and go. XRP, still doing a whole lot of nothing, but I suspect when Bitcoin finds its low, this thing's going to fly. MATIC, I did say to be open to rolling over into that cycle low, but if it's going to lead, you've got to let it lead. So long and strong, continue to push. Zcash, exactly the same deal. Probably going to drop down into this cycle low. I think it's probably be a bit lower. And then we will be tucking some of that away in a long-term account as well. So that's the analysis from me. I hope you enjoyed today. Drop a like if you found value here today. We'll be looking for swing lows to form in the equity markets as of next week. And at the end of next week, I think it's time to start scaling into these minor positions and the crypto positions too. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe and turn the notifications on. These cycle lows have been really, really good at keeping us out of getting chopped up in the crypto markets. We haven't been aping in and out of sideways markets. We haven't been giving the market makers too many stops. I think potentially going to give one on the NASDAQ, depending on how hard Amazon sells off. But if we do, like I said, this was a trade that will cover all bases. So if we have to give 1% back and then re-enter, that's fine. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Hope you're doing well in life. All the best from me. Take care. Cheers.